Good evening and welcome to the Saturday night edition of Don't Feed the Narcissist. I'm your host, Mrs. A, and I've been gone for 4 years. I've been busy living my life. What have you been doing in the last 4 years? I'm very glad to be back. I've got some interesting things to share with you all that I will be sharing in the coming weeks of what I've been doing in my life, and I'm ready to share that with the world. But I just wanted to kick off my reopening of my YouTube channel. I have not posted, like I said, since I think 2016. And looking forward to where this journey is going to take us together. What I want to talk about this evening, I am ready to just jump right in, talking about our favorite subject, narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, narcs, whatever you want to call them, abusers. That's what we really need to call them, our abusers. And the topic for tonight is getting into the mind of the abuser. What are they really thinking? What are their motives? There's a lot of information on the internet about narcissism. And I don't want to regurgitate what you all already know. From my experience of interacting with other victims of narcissists, we're experts. We know more about this disorder than the so-called mental health experts. So we don't need to go over, the 9 traits of narcissism, how to, look, what is a Hoover? We're not going to go over that. You people are too smart for that. What we're going over tonight is getting in the mind of the abuser. And this talk that I'm going to give here has been inspired by an article I read on abusesanctuary.blogspot.com. And this article was written by, good golly, Mary M. Allward, called Inside the Mind of an Abuser. And I'm not going to just read the whole article. But I found this very interesting because I've never really come across anything like this. So, I'm just going to look at this article. The method of the abusers, and again, an abuser can be a man or a woman. Traditionally in the past, narcissists were exclusively men, and we can get into a lot of debates over why that is. My personal belief is that more women today are narcissistic because they are rejecting their feminine nature and they're becoming more masculine. And women, by our feminine nature, have a huge capacity for empathy. And I believe, I'm a Christian, so I believe God created women to have an abundance of empathy so that we could raise children and raise them properly and love them and nurture them, but also teach them how to have a conscience. And as more and more women reject their feminine nature, I believe that we're going to see greater numbers of female narcissists. So yes, a man or a woman could be a narcissist. My mom is a narcissist, and she's also a feminist, and no surprise there. But these abusers, they use different methods to manipulate their victims. And it's a natural part of their personality that developed at a very young age, and they fine-tuned it over the years, and they probably started with their mothers or their fathers. And abusers share behaviors and thinking patterns. So it's all dysfunctional behavior, but I'm going to read this paragraph. It's very interesting. Abusers keep their victims in the dark about events that are taking place. They are most always in control of the finances. They talk about the victim behind their back in order to cause them to become isolated, and they make plans that include the victim without consulting them. I mean, right there, I don't even have to go any further in this paragraph and tell you I absolutely experienced that. Absolutely. So let's get to this. The abuser's goal is to monopolize the victim's time and physical environment and suppress their behavior. So there you have it, folks. Why do they abuse you? There's a lot of talk about power, control. Yes, okay, but that's not a goal in of itself. Those are intangible things. And like, what is that really? Power and control are tools that are used to achieve this goal. And I'm going to repeat this again because I want you to really understand this. The abuser's goal is to monopolize the victim's time and physical environment and suppress their behavior. Very interesting. An abusive partner tells you what social events you can attend and who you can go with. He may insist you quit work and remain at home where he can keep an eye on you. Or he may tell you that you can no longer participate in hobbies. Abusers most often insist you move to a location away from family members, friends, or other contacts that will give you support. Guys, if you've been in a relationship with a narcissistic abuser, please don't get offended that this article has he and him and all that. We all know it can be both. Abusers do their best to instill feelings of fear, powerlessness, and dependency in their victim. Both verbal and emotional abuse heightens these feelings, and they grow more pronounced as time passes. I feel like this article was written about me. It's uncanny. So the abuser's system of logic is closed. She doesn't allow her partner to voice opinions or criticize her in any way. She lets you know without a doubt that her word is law. So there you go. It could be a female. So this is their motive. Now their motive is to gain absolute and total power and control over the victim, because their goal is to monopolize the victim's time, their physical environment, suppress their behavior so that the victim dedicates their entire existence. I'm not reading from the article. This is me speaking here, Mrs. A. That the victim no longer lives for any other purpose but to serve the abuser. Well, what are the different ways that you serve abusers? Through validating them, through doing favors for them, through making their fragile ego feel better. Let's talk about some of the tactics of this. You're very familiar with this, but let's just go over it again. There's going to be a range of different tactics used. One is domination. And I think it bears saying that if a narcissist is a very malignant narcissist, or they happen to be a sociopath, they're going to exhibit something called fearless domination or fearless dominance. I'll talk about that in a minute. So abusers are extremely dominating to the point that they want to control everything the victim does. How did this manifest in my life? Well, I could be going to a nail salon. I could be going to the grocery store. And the first thing is my husband would say, "Oh, do you need me to go with you?" And of course, my answer is no, because I'm thinking to myself, that's ridiculous. I, don't need a chaperone. And I like to do things by myself. I'm kind of an introvert. And he would pout if I would say no. And he would punish me by not talking to me. Or another thing he would do is when I was actually out running my errands, he'd call me like every 20 minutes with something ridiculous. "Oh, by the way, I went to the store and I bought some fertilizer for the yard." "Okay, great." 20 minutes later, "Oh, I just got back, I went up to and put gas in the car." I mean, these flimsy excuses to be calling me. And really, at first, when I first got involved with him, I thought, "Oh, isn't this very cute? He just loves me, misses me so much. He just wants to be calling me all the time." And when I first met this guy, I didn't realize it till I added it up later. He had me on the phone 6 hours every day. It really interfered with my job, but this is just, he had to, because me going away from him and being out of his sight, out of his control made him feel a lot of anxiety, because abusers and narcissists, they have a lot of anxiety issues. And this is their way of dealing with the anxiety and the fear of abandonment. So they want to control everything that you're doing. When they don't get their way, they act like spoiled brats. I mean, my husband, I think, had the emotional age of about 2 or 3, because, you know, some 2 or 3-year-olds, they get really upset and they cry. That's normal. And then if you don't respond, they escalate and they cry harder and louder. You ever seen a little 2 or 3-year-old start banging their head on something? That's the kind of stuff my husband would do. He would actually injure himself the more upset he got. So, and that's basically a type of threat. If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to cause a skull fracture. If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to keep, you know, doing whatever till I'm bleeding or something like that. So if you allow your abuser to dominate you, it's only going to escalate, because when you no longer respond to their tactics, they're going to escalate it. Verbal assault. So they're verbally assaulting by calling names. You know, you fat slob, you pig, you cow, lazy, stupid. They degrade you, screaming, threatening, criticizing. I mean, criticizing every little thing, to the point where you're so afraid of, like, oh my God, what are they going to complain about today? Berating, humiliating you. One way that a narcissist likes to humiliate you is by revealing your secrets to other people and then acting as if it was an accident. So they like to call their victim out in front of family and friends. So they'll take like a small personality flaw and they'll embellish it to the extreme to humiliate them. They'll even make snide remarks, sarcasm, and it erodes your self-confidence. So love to make the victim look bad in front of others. And the purpose of this is to isolate you, to reduce your self-confidence, so that you know, in their mind, the worse you feel about yourself, the less likely you are to leave them. Because I don't know if you knew this, but an abuser is extremely emotionally dependent on their victim. And what's ironic is the victim thinks they're the ones that are dependent, but it's actually the other way around. The abuser absolutely cannot live without you. And that's why they do all these things to keep you in their life. I mean, is that crazy or what? I am not going to go over gaslighting, because there's 1,000,001 YouTube videos about gaslighting. I'm not even going to address it here. But I am going to talk about this, because this really jumped out at me. Constant chaos. So in our home, my husband did what I called low-level conflict, just ambient abuse, constant chaos. So they keep the household, and particularly the victim's emotions, in total chaos by starting little arguments, constantly being in conflict with the other family members over everything and anything, so that they've got an excuse to always be disappointed, to always be in a bad mood, and they just keep this going. So there was something else in the article that I wanted to talk about. I can't find it, but drama. This is related to the constant chaos. So an abuser can't really develop close, intimate relationships. They're incapable of it for 2 reasons. One is they're too afraid, because they know they'd have to be vulnerable, and they can't tolerate it because they don't trust. And the other thing is they don't really know how. So what they do is they replace closeness and intimacy with drama, because it makes their life more exciting. This is why in the beginning of a romantic relationship with an abuser, it's so passionate and romantic, because they know how to do that. They love that, actually. And ironically, if you sit and you talk to an abuser after their relationship has gone sour, And my husband was exactly like this, totally obsessed with getting back to that phase of the relationship because that's familiar to them and that feels really good to them because there's no intimacy, there's no vulnerability, or there's very little. And it's so exciting. So because they can't be close to anyone, they substitute with drama. So that brings that excitement into their life. They love watching other people argue and fight. So once if you're in a romantic relationship with an abuser, once you've gotten past that initial phase and you're in devalue and discard, what you're going to notice is to keep the drama going. They're going to triangulate. They pit people against one another to get them fighting. And a typical thing that happened in my household was getting me upset with my kids, but really he was like exaggerating and making things up. Blaming the kids for things, pointing out all the kids' little tiny errors so that I would think that he looked better by comparison. So they love constant chaos and upheaval. Another thing is anger management. Their sense of entitlement is so pronounced that they don't even think they have to manage their anger. It's kind of like, your job is to soothe me and your job is to manage my anger because when I was a little baby, that's what my mommy did. And you're my new mommy, and it doesn't matter male or female, but that's how they look at it. Your job, your existence is here to make me feel better. And if you're not doing it, then you're the bad guy and I don't want to play with you anymore. So I'm going to wrap it up. That gives us opportunities to talk about things in the future, but I'm really glad to be back. And please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel, share this channel with your friends. Please leave comments below. Let's get good dialogue. Be nice. Obviously, I'm going to delete any comments that are vulgar or whatever, and let's be kind to one another. And we will be back next Saturday night with the next installment of Don't Feed the Narcs. I'm your host, Mrs. A. Have a good evening.